gamified type of app for wannabe doctors to help them complete their degree and learn the basics of medicine so that they can actually operate as mass doctors in regions of Africa where there's just no access to any hospital. Same thing with education. There's plenty of apps out there who use gamification as a way to help children go through the learning process. But at the same time, gamification can be used in the worst way possible to get you addicted to the worst behavior possible. And so to me, it's always this idea that technology is not neutral. That's what Baufest was talking about during the summit today. It's like technology is what you make it to be, but it can't be neutral because it's created by a human. So this idea, I hear often like, technology is neither good nor bad. It's like, no, technology is either good or bad. It's just what it does, whether it's good or bad depends on us. So it's very different than saying technology is neutral. And again, this is what Baufest was talking about. So gamification for me is the exact same thing. It's like, it can be an amazing force of good, and it can be like the worst thing possible because it gets us completely, addicted to that little thing, and all we do is like all the time go back to whatever app we have that is using this gamification system. Does that make sense? Thank you very much.
Yeah, a lot. Thank you.
Bueno, sí, creo que somos tres, así que si les parece, sigo
Venga,
yo
Sebastián.
nuevamente. Perfecto. Maelle, has tenido mucha experiencia como ejecutiva en distintas empresas de tecnología y en todo lo que es la posibilidad de juntar capital para armar una empresa o estar en el proceso de compra y venta de empresas tecnológicas, etcétera. Y quería preguntarte justamente si hay muchos críticos que dicen que hay empresas que solamente se desarrollan, se arman para ser vendidas, para salir a la bolsa y no tanto para resolver algún problema particular, sino más que nada para recaudar capital y luego salir a la bolsa y generar ganancia para los fundadores y los que inviertan de esa manera. Y quería preguntarte cuál crees que es como el equilibrio en eso. O sea, ¿cuál es el equilibrio entre recaudar capital, entre salir a buscar capital y resolver un problema real de personas reales?
I love that question. Nobody ever asked me that question, but it is so key to the way Silicon Valley operates, and a lot of questions around should you or should you not fundraise? Should you focus on the exit before you actually build the company? I mean, this is just, so thank you. I love the question. All right, so at a high level, I think you can't build a sustainable, healthy company if you're not solving an actual problem. And so, and I'll go deeper in to answer your question, but I think it's important to keep the perspective that in general, in a capitalistic world, and I'm a capitalist, so I as I've said earlier, I do really believe that actually company businesses are a great way to drive innovation, are a great way to increase the standards of living of people. And they provide services which are very needed, because if they don't, they basically die. That's part of the capitalist system. So I'm a capitalist. And so in general, I think we have established a system in Western societies that is not perfect by far, but that works in general. And that is to say that with a few exceptions, in general, in the long term, as a company, you are not going to survive if you do not answer an actual need, if you don't solve an actual problem. Now, what's interesting is, and I would say the vast majority of tech companies operate under this exact same rules, which is in the long term, if they are not solving a problem and or addressing a need as such, they're not going to be around. And there's a very large symmetry of companies, of tech companies, who thought they were kind of solving a problem, and then the market was like, that's not a problem, and so we don't need you, and the company just disappeared. So in general, the system is working. Now, the problem is twofold. The one is because there is such a massive influx of capital in tech startups, and these companies stay private for longer, and there is an acceptance by investors that it's okay to be losing money for years, if not decades, to gain monopolistic position, basically. Because of that, there are a lot of companies that, there's a reasonable number of companies that, yeah, fundamentally they don't really solve a problem, they don't really answer real needs from real people, but they are kept alive because there is everything that I've just described. And so it takes them longer to die or longer to go smaller, because there is this whole influx of capital, understanding that it's going to take a long time to get to profitability, blah blah blah. So that's one problem, and you've seen that there's been a lot of IPO over the last few weeks. I think that investors in general are smart, and so they're just learning is a big word, but I think there's a recognition that it is probably not that good for a company to stay private for too long if they're massive, and that there has to be a path to profitability, even if the company is not profitable. There has to be a path to profitability, which wasn't as much of a focus, let's say, even 2 years ago. And so I think some of the things that happened with WeWork, for example, or the poor performance of Uber during IPO, have raised again this question of profitability does matter. You have to be growing, you have to answer a need, etc. And so I can see an evolution, even though you will still see some companies that are there still alive and probably shouldn't be. Now, there's a second problem, which is, I think, more what the one you're referring to, which is this question of companies that were purely set, almost like financial mechanism. Founders who are basically raising as much as they can, as quickly as they can, and exit as fast as they can. And not just founders, by the way, investors too, because it takes two to tango. And so it's not exactly like the founders kind of tricked the investors. The investors were on it with them. Wow. I would say they're less than, this is not the majority of companies I know. And again, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And it is very clear that for a lot of tech people, the exit is a key topic, but it is a key topic because you have to remember how our compensation system is being built. For a lot of us, we earn in cash significantly less than we would earn in the more traditional industry, given our skills and experience. And the tech companies make it up to us through stock options. And so suddenly you are very directly incentivized, because stock options are not liquid. You are very directly incentivized to make sure that the company fundraise, because fundraising usually means secondary, so you can exit a little bit, you can get some of your money out, etc. And so there are definitely people who build company just for the sake of exiting, but I would think that this is really a minority. Most people want to actually build something that solve a problem. It may not be like a humanity changing problem, but I think they kind of want to get up in the morning and do something that matters. But like in any industry, right? You always have people who are more attracted by money than anything else. And I just think that the tech ecosystem maybe enable these people a little more than other industries for reason that I mentioned. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes perfect sense. I was thinking about some examples. It's like WeWork, which is not what I was thinking when I made the question, but it's an example of the problems that have some companies sometimes when they grow very much, very rapidly, and they can turn a profit.
Yeah, totally. I mean, WeWork is the poster child of like questionable practices when it comes to fundraising and potential and management of potential profitability or lack of.
Sure.